I think we're all set, Ilana. It's all up to you. Take it away.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All up to me. Okay, Jewel and I are so glad to be sharing this electronic space with you. We invited the other 5 writers not only because they are our friends and colleagues, but because of their abilities to see the world as it is and envision worlds we yearn to live in, creating the ground on which we might all move forward. And certainly we could have invited many more, but we all have enough to say to fill 8 hours. So, but we're not going to go for 8 hours, I
I
promise.
hope you brought your lunch.
So, Jewel.
I'm really, really happy, Alana, that you invited me to work with you on this project, because these are the voices that helped shape who we are, I believe, as lesbian feminists through the last couple of decades. So it's a chance to honor each of these writers, to get to hear their work out loud again, and maybe share their work with people who haven't heard us read in a while. And finally, it's also a chance to get to see faces that we haven't seen in a long time. I've been checking them out. Hi, Reds. And it's really great to spot names and people that we haven't talked to in a long time. So I really appreciate this opportunity to be part of the OLOC community.
Okay.
So I think we can get started.
All right. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce my friend Jewelle Gomez. Jewelle Gomez, 1948, Cape Verdean, Wampanoag, and Iowa, is a playwright, novelist, and poet. She's the author of 8 books, including the first Black lesbian vampire novel, The Gilda Stories, which has been in print continuously for more than 30 years. The novel was recently optioned by Cheryl Dunye for development as a television miniseries, which we are all really looking forward to seeing. The novel's sequel, Gilda Threshold, is forthcoming. Her trilogy of plays, Waiting for Giovanni, about James Baldwin, Leaving the Blues, about Alberta Hunter, and Unpacking in P-Town, were commissioned by New Conservatory Theater Center in San Francisco. And the first 2 have also played in New York. She was on the founding boards of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, otherwise known as GLAAD, and the Astrea Lesbian Foundation and Open Meadows Foundation. Jewelle Gomez.
Thank you, Alana. Again, it's really wonderful to see people's faces and to get to read with this group of people that most of whom I haven't read with in decades. I'm going to read 2 pieces. The first is a monologue from the play I wrote based on the Gilda Stories, which was Bones and Ash, and it is called Desire. Love is a mystery, the clouded peaks of mountains. I had it for her, for others, but desire is even more. Savage self-interest, elemental, opening, to take, to reveal enough to take. Lay here beside me, feel me steal across you when you sleep. Suck your breath as they claim cats can do. Listen as I do this and be happy. I have finally come. It may be death, but it is also desire. A fuel, not a place. I push you back into the dirt, the soil of your ancestors, slipping inside you like a farmer reaching for new potatoes. Moist, solid prizes, small scarlet reminders of survival. Hold on to the rock at your head, to the grass at your side, but not to me. I am motion, living within the moments that have survived the past. It's not difficult being Black, being Negro, being colored, being woman. It is difficult being and being and being, emptying out and refilling, reusable container wanting. It is difficult to miss the dour certainty of the cotton rose and not offer blood as a substitute. Only this is assured. Desire lies in sweat, incoherent words never repeated before friends, and the loud song offered up. On your back, heels digging into the silken dirt, you've forgotten you ever had a mother or mailed a letter. You might have come from my past or your own. The future may belong to us both. When my mouth is open to let ideas out and you in, that is desire. Unstable, gaseous, explosive. You give me your breath, I would take your blood in mine, whether it meant life or not. Without our knowledge or consent, desire remains a foundry, toiling, hot, productive for only itself, metal, clanging, plunging, solid, then liquid, alchemy, unchained melody. Desire is the only now I own. And the second piece I want to read is from my play about James Baldwin, entitled Waiting for Giovanni. And in it, we see the friendship between Lorraine Hansberry and Jimmy Baldwin. And a lot of her conversation with him is in letters, as is this one. Dear Jimmy, we each suck our words from the breath the dead leave behind. Don't lose sight of that. Jet magazine published a picture of Emmett Till's mother, Mamie. She went to the train depot to get his coffin and insisted on identifying her son's mutilated body in public. The barbed wire that held that boy's corpse down in the muddy waters of the Tallahatchie River was not wrapped around his neck anymore, but it was a brutal sight. In this picture, Emmett Till's mother is collapsing under her grief. Her knees buckle and two men are holding her up. Her head is thrown back, oblivious. Her upturned, handsome face is a mask of desolation, a face her son will never see again. Those killers looked at Emmett Till and they did not see a young man. All they saw was a symbol of sexual perversion. But was it ours or their own? Emmett Till's bones will long be dust before anyone understands how we need to speak of love. If we don't start listening to each other, Armageddon might come quietly, like a whisper of gossip, weakening us until we no longer hear. That vitriol that killed Emmett Till is not too far from what they feel when they look at me or at you and your lover, Luke. That is why you must write your book. Then if you and Luke can avoid the barbed wire, we'll all have a chance. And if things are not working out with you and Luke, I am so sorry. I have to believe there will be other loves, but books, true books, do not pull up to our stoops in taxi cabs. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our other dramatist on hand, that is Terry Baum. Terry Baum's Dos Lobos inspired Places, Please, the first anthology of lesbian plays in the history of the universe, published in 1985. Her work has been translated and produced throughout the US and Europe, and in Mexico, Cuba, Israel, and South Africa. She has toured internationally as a solo performer. In 2019, Exit Press published One Dyke's Theater, an anthology of her plays. In 2021, she has had 2 live stream productions, Hick, a Love Story, presented by Exit Theater, and Eve in Therapy, presented by the Dramatists Guild. Terry Baum.
Thank you, Jewel. This is an excerpt from Hick, A Love Story, the romance of Lorena Hickok and Eleanor Roosevelt. It's in my anthology, One Dyke's Theater. The Great First Ladies, a lesbian relationship is confirmed by the 2,336 letters she wrote to Hick, a famous journalist, over a period of 30 years. In this scene, Hick is trying to decide what to do with all those letters. After I blew up in public, Eleanor fell out of love. She felt she couldn't trust me around other people. And she was right. She couldn't. She still loved me. We talked on the phone all the time, wrote books together. I lived in the White House all of World War II. She needed a friend nearby. And of course, she wrote the letters always. My dear one died 6 years ago, and I'm still in love. Once you've been had by Eleanor Roosevelt, you stay had. And now here I sit surrounded by all her letters, hundreds, thousands. The National Archive wants me to donate them. Listen to this one. Oh, dear one, it is all the little things, the tones in your voice, the feel of your hair, gestures. These are the things I think about and long for. This is a letter from Eleanor Roosevelt to me. The feel of your hair, that's a smoking gun. Oh, and then this one. I'm getting so hungry to see you. I ache to hold you close. If anyone reads these, they'll know she was in love with me. I've burned quite a few letters already. The worst ones. They were the best ones. Oh, she could be a very naughty girl, you know? You don't know, do you? I'm the only one who knows that. And I never talked about it, ever. They all knew. Everyone around us, they gossiped about us. Used to scare the bejesus out of me. She said, Hick, darling, what we are doing is just too far beyond the pale to speak about, except behind closed doors. And you were right, madam. You were right about so many things. FDR didn't give a damn, did he? He had his own secrets. I love that man, what he did for the country, for the world. And am I now going to reveal to that world that I had an affair with his wife? Madam, what am I to do with all the letters you wrote me? And why did you leave this to me? You could have asked for your letters back. You could have told me to burn them all. I would have done it. I would have cried like a baby, but I would have. Dear one, are you up for being mocked and despised as a pervert? Because I am seriously considering giving all the letters to the national. Madam, my beauty, my love, are you ashamed of who I am? You loved me. How can it be shameful what we did together, what we felt for each other? I was loved by Eleanor Roosevelt. I was loved by Eleanor Roosevelt. She was my lady. I was her knight, her refuge. 30 years of love. I am proud of that. I cannot destroy the letters. They're all that remains. People will never understand, but I don't give a damn. They will know. I'm giving the letters, all of them, to the National Archive. I want people to know. I want you to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was amazing. I love that piece. Thank you. So I will now introduce my dear friend, Cheryl Clark, who was born in 1947. Since 1979, Cheryl's writing has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies, including Conditions, Sinister Wisdom, Callaloo, a journal of African Americans and African arts and letters, and African American Literary Review. And some anthologies such as This Bridge Called My Back, writings by radical women of color, Home Girls, The World in Us, Lesbian and Gay Poetry of the Next Wave. She is also the author of 5 books of poetry. In 2013, she retired from Rutgers University. Since then, she has been one of the co-organizers of the annual Hobart, New York Festival of Women Writers. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you, Jewel. Thank you for that introduction. I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to OLOC for inviting me. I'm going to read a poem from my most recent chapbook called Targets. This poem is called
These are women writers.
Pardon me? This poem is called History. 1. When an incident occurs like the Mike Brown police murder, Black people see history. Slavery, the betrayal of Reconstruction, Jim Crow, Plessy, lynch law, segregation, Mississippi goddamn. Cops see only the one event, says a venerable white historian. Cops see history too, the history of their racist rationalizations. Both act accordingly. Cops bring down the brutal force of the state upon the Black person, man or woman. The Black person sees history. 2, if there were one story I had the power of prerogative to change, besides the 2016 presidential election, Billie Holiday's is the one. Every time I listen to her sing one of those droll tunes she made art, I ask, why'd you have to take yourself down that drain, baby girl? Your baby voice and cool knowledge, why? You had everything. The answers are not in our stars, baby girl. only in legend of your leg atop shabby dressing room vanity, trying to get a good vein. 3, President Obama takes to Twitter. His followers tweet, "Welcome to Twitter, nigga." 4, while I can casually dismiss having had an affair with a married woman, I will never forget Louise. Long black hair whipped back into a ponytail like Billy in the late 50s, and a fabulous, extravagant sense of humor and love of cannabis that sent my inexperienced mind and me into an orbit of nonsense and theater that nearly ended, or at least ruined, my life. There I was on that fated morning, left with husband Billy downstairs, shouting up at me, "Tell Louise to come out of that apartment this minute, or I'm going to break this door in." And Billy did. And Louise ran out past him to her Pontiac and drove out of my life. Police no match for the tall elegance in gray suit and his straight black male desperation to follow Louise. With the .38 protruding hard against his trouser pocket, I admired his resistance in spite of myself. The way the pigs jumped back. "Wait a minute, buddy," they say weakly as they fall back onto their squad car. "You wait, you cops. Don't you buddy me," Billy snaps. The cops later pronounced the event a tiff between the boyfriend and the girlfriend. 5, I can still recall that desire, walking out onto my street to meet her as she left from her Pontiac, the seat of many rendezvous. We see each other a block away, laughter of recognition, each moseying to the other, heads and hips cocked. On their way to Point Pleasant, friends pass me in their car, grunting, at the resonant certainty of our kinesis. Her fitted linen dress, bare legs, high heels, and briefless. Me, boxer shorts, tank top, Converse high tops, braless. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It is, we all have so many rich things to tell you. And now we get to hear Dorothy Allison. Dorothy, 1949, was born in Greenville, South Carolina, and makes her home in Northern California with her partner, Alex, and their son, Wolf Michael. Bastard Out of Carolina, her first novel, was a finalist for the 1992 National Book Award. Cave Dweller, from 1998, a New York Times bestseller, won the 1998 Lambda Literary Award for Fiction and was a finalist for the Lillian Smith Prize. A novel is forthcoming from Penguin. Her short stories have been widely published. Please welcome Dorothy Allison.
Unmute.
Unmute. Okay, am I unmuted? Yes, good. I'm having a difficulty because each of you have made me weepy. So I've had to keep wiping my eyes, and my eyes are a little blurry, but you know. So I'm going to go back in time. This is 2 or 3 things I know for sure, and you are all lesbian, so you can handle this shit. I had this girlfriend once, scared all my other girlfriends off. Big, blonde, shy, and oh, so butch. Just out of the army, drove a 2-door Chevy with a reinforced trunk, would not say why. What you carry in that car, I asked her. You moving contraband state to state? I was joking. I was teasing. I was putting my hand on her ass. I was grinning at her scowl. I was touching her in places she could not admit she liked. I ain't moving nothing, she said. Uh-huh. So how come I feel so moved? And then she blushed. Oh, God. I love it when women blush, especially them big butch girls who know you want them. And oh, God, I wanted that woman. I wanted her. Oh, but she was so difficult. Wouldn't let me give her a back rub, wouldn't let me read her palm, wouldn't even let me sew up her tear in her jeans. All those ritual techniques Southern femmes have employed in the seduction of all them innocent butch girls. It was a basic error. This one was not from the South. A Yankee born in Chicago. Runaway raised in Barbados by a daddy who worked as a mafia bagman and was never really sure whether he was bringing up a boy or a girl. He bought her her first 3-piece suit, but then he cursed at how good she looked in it. Still, he signed permission for her to join the army. My daddy loves me, she told me, but he don't understand me. She told me that after I'd helped her move furniture for 2 hours and we were laying back drinking beer and talking, and I was nodding. I was pretty damn sure her daddy understood her way more than she was ever going to manage to handle. That's enough of that. I don't know what to do now.
Oh, you just take your applause. Yeah, just take your applause.
You all make me
Okay.
cry looking at your
Thank-
face.
Thank you, Dorothy. See, I told you I wanted to do this reading so we could be like see all my old friends. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Elana Dykewomon, 1949. Elana is a longtime social justice activist, editor, and teacher living in Oakland, California. She's published 8 award-winning books foregrounding lesbian heroism, including her Lambda-winning Beyond the Pale. And she received the 2018 Lee Lynch Classic Award from the Golden Crown Literary Society for her first novel, Riverfinger Woman. She was inducted into the Saints and Sinners Hall of Fame in 2018. Sinister Wisdom has just launched a special issue Elana co-edited with Judith Katz, To Be a Jewish Dyke in the 21st Century. Currently, she is working on a full-length play about lesbian love, dementia, right to die, caretaking, and community, honoring her late spouse, Susan Levinkind, with Alter Theater and San Rafael. Thanks, Elana.
Thank you, Jewel. Okay, so this first one is called A Full Course Load. I'm going to be reading poems because that's what I've been writing lately. A full course load. Death is the school and all the teachers in it. Isn't that enough to say? I am too tired to copy the class lists, the syllabi, the sections in different locations on death's vast campus. Though I've been at it more than 50 years, used to fall asleep in my 8 a.m. class of Attic Greek, a language no one alive exactly speaks. Dead tongues, room 205. See what I mean? No one knows what the course reading will be or where until death summons you to her office, says, now look again at your grandmother's burns, your mother's oxygen, your lover's seizures. What did you learn? What did I learn? Death hurts, but like a hamster in a dog's mouth, you pass out. That's just the basic course, death scoffs. A student pokes her head in. Genocide 610? Past, present, and future, death remembers. Death remembers all her offerings. End of the quad, 4th floor, colonial building. You will recognize the door. She returns to me, our oral examination. Okay, here's what I understood first. What you give thinking, damn, I'm generous, gee, I'm good, aren't my gifts just fine? You find turned inside out, humbled for a lifetime because off the cuff, close to glib, you gave your grandmother roses, your mother a slice of tongue, your lover that one last trip. Humbled, death says, that's good enough. I'll pass you on to level 7. How many levels? 3 dozen or 90, 111 in this cluster. You've seen death grin, haven't you? Her face is in the papers, the camps, rising ethers form her skeleton above streets of corpses and in cartoons. You reach for her bony fingers and find instead the schedule for next semester. This next one is a prose poem called The Widow's Apartment Building. This afternoon's idea, a widow's apartment building, the lesbian widows complex. All of us selling houses, condos, giving up leases, folding tents, those who have moved twice, hoping to escape ghosts. We consolidate resources and buy a place with a courtyard. In the courtyard, a small fountain ringed with tiles, orange and gold, white and blue. A pitcher spills water into the pool. Sometimes in the afternoon, 1 or 3 will gather in the shade, bringing cushions for our aches, and say our dead's names. Or talk about current events, how we might still be of use. The hallways smell of griefs and cooking spice. We share as the mood moves us to. No one wants to enter another's bed, though we might enjoy imagining it now and then. We have read all the poetry about taking chances and leaping into the void. We leapt, didn't we? And now we have landed. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the fantastic poet and essayist, Irina Cleffice, 1941. Lesbian, secular Jew, poet, teacher, activist, Yiddish translator, scholar of Yiddish women writers, landed in New York at the age of 8 with a community of Holocaust survivors, members of the Jewish Labor Bund. A founding editor of Conditions, she also co-founded the Jewish Women's Committee to End the Occupation and co-edited The Tribe of Dinah, a Jewish women's anthology. She taught Jewish studies for 22 years at Barnard College and women's studies, and for 10 years at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. The author of A Few Words in the Mother Tongue, poetry, and Dreams of an Insomniac, essays, her new poetry manuscript is titled Her Birth and Later Years. Welcome, Irina.
Thank you so much, Elana. Thank you, Jewelle, for inviting me in this incredible group. I mean, I'm really, really honored. I'm going to read 2 poems, one slightly older and one much more recent. This first one, excuse me, this is old age vocal cords. I'm not hoarse or anything. This is natural. This first poem is called Grief, Brunswick Public Library, Maine. At the library, the woman with the broken English is broken, and so she wails, cracking the comforting silence. Everyone stops at the computers, along the orderly shelves, at the children's desk, where the papier-mâché animals seem to be drained of their colors as if the sound had washed them in tears. She clutches a small girl and weeps, her arms tight around the child, while a librarian tries to calm her. It's an old story. It's an old story. Her husband left, simply left, for the West Coast, for Singapore, Canada, for a job just down the highway in Harpswell. Perhaps she has no home to go to. Perhaps she'll kill herself and the child, she wails. The librarians huddle and call the police, and the police call for an ambulance. I think about the child, her fear, the father gone, and soon the mother too, for who will risk her with this woman? Who will risk the mother's pounding heart, her terror, her realization that she is alone on this unfathomable continent in a library with so many atlases and answers, and not one to translate an abandoned woman awash in grief. The second poem I'm going to read is it's a kind of bilingual Yiddish-English poem that I've experimented this kind of style with. I keep saying I'm going to do it and abandon it, and then I come back to it. So this is this poem that actually started with the Yiddish, and you'll understand the meaning of the words as I go along. Der Fremder in der Fremd. Gedenkst, do you remember when you were a stranger among strangers? A Fremder on Papieren, a stranger without papers. Gedenkst die Frages, those endless questions, wer seid ihr, von wannen kommt ihr, who are you, where are you from, why are you here and not there? Wer seinen gewinn eure Schreinem, who were your neighbors, where was the school, what work did you do, what can you do here that you couldn't do there? Noch einmal, for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time, wer seid ihr? Von wannen kommt ihr? Who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here and not there? Wer ist der Mann? Wer ist die Frau? Who is this man? Who's this woman und die Papieren and their papers und das Kind and this child? Did you find it here or bring it from there? Do you have a passport for him, for her, for ein Kind, that one with the dark hair? Noch einmal, for the 10th, 11th, 12th time. Wer seid ihr? Von wann kommt ihr? Who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here and not there? Who do you know here? Who did you know there? Where will you sleep? How did you sleep there? Und eure Chaläumes, what did you dream of here? What did you dream of there? Where will you work here? What work did you do there? And why can't you just work there? Wo ist die Visa, die grüne Karte, das Passport, Visa, green card, passport, photo from here and from there? And why did you cut your hair? Und das Kind? And why did you bring this child here and not leave it there? Noch einmal, for the 18th, 19th, 20th time, wer seid ihr? Von wann kommt ihr? Für was seid ihr da? Und ich geblieben dort. Why are you here? And why didn't you just stay there? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to have the pleasure now of introducing our final reader, Kitty Tsui, 1952. Yeah, okay, now we got Kitty. Kitty was born in the year of the dragon in the city of 9 dragons, Kowloon, Hong Kong. The daughter and granddaughter of immigrants, she is a longtime activist working and marching for civil rights, women's rights, LGBT rights, and LGBT rights. She is a multi-hyphenate. She loves her rescue dogs as much as her work. Her poetry, drawn from personal experience, is also a celebration of lesbian love in chaotic political times. She is the subject of Nice Girls Don't, an award-winning documentary. And she wrote the groundbreaking book, Words of a Woman Who Breathes Fire, was a founding member of Unbound Feet. She's considered one of the foremothers of the Asian Pacific Islander API lesbian feminist movement. Thank you, Kitty.
Thank you. This was commissioned by the Smithsonian for their digital poetry exhibition, A Day in the Life of Queer Asian Pacific America. A day in my normal lesbian life. This is a day in my life. This is a day in my normal lesbian life. I begin my lesbian morning the way I like, the way I always like. Espresso, 3 shots, the taste of it strong in my mouth as I approach my favorite slope. No, I do not ski, but I know how to navigate the slope of your hip. I know it well. I climb the curve of your hip, my hand touching you, turning you, touching the cheeks of your perfectly beautiful ass. Walking our dogs Bo and Luli at the Albany Bulb is always part of my day. Any day, every day. Birdsong abounds. Crows compete with ravens. The tufted titmouse chimes in with its cheery chirps. Birdsong abounds. Swallows dipping in their flight as they do every day. Fly day, fly, dip, fly, every day, any day. News flashes disrupt the serenity of my normal lesbian life. News flash, 2 lesbians in love, 2 lesbians out for the night, harassed by 3 cis men, followed from bar to bar. No one is safe. Newsflash, build a wall. No one is safe. Muslim ban. No one is safe. DACA in question. No one is safe. Emboldened ICE. No one is safe. No one is safe in a day in my life, a day in my normal lesbian life. Newsflash, so-called president lies, cheats, steals, runs a con with his cronies, crafting nefarious deeds to enrich themselves and their ilk. No one is safe. Sun, moon, stars, always constant despite crazed people in high places making demonic decisions. No one is safe. Sun, moon, stars, a constant, like your arms around me, your lips on my cheek, your breath in my ear. I love you. I am yours until the end of time. You are safe. I am safe. We are safe. This day, we are safe. This day in my normal lesbian life. See? I'm going to do some quick cutting here. Old, elderly, senior, senile, old timer, old fool, older than God, over the hill, past the expiration date. Little old lady, LOL. Better hope you make it to old, LOL. Run, swim, fly. Years ago, he came to me, a project dog, returned by not one, but two families. Returned to the pound, sentenced to life in a cage, in a kennel, or worse. The first days, home on a walk, a sudden gust of wind blows his floppy ears. He lifts his head, nose up to the sky, sniffs the air. I see him smile. He knows he is home. Bo, loving, gentle soul, my rescue dog, he rescued me. Bo, my boy dog, old now, as am I. One night he says to me, we had a great run. Yes, we did, Bo. Yes, we did. Soar on the wings of eagles, fly with angels, dance with dragons, gallop with dolphins, swim with wolves. Run, Bo, run with wolves. I am going to finish with magic moments dedicated to all of you lesbians out there. Magic moments. I will never forget the first time you put your lips on me, my lips on you. Magic moments when we were young and gay. All those magic moments are years living as lesbians. Those magic moments softer than a summer night. Those magic lesbian moments softer than a summer night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, here we are back. Yes, Elana?
Yeah, and I think
Okay.
we're all supposed to come back now.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. We're all coming back. Because we're going to talk amongst ourselves. We have a bunch of questions to ask, and I think Jewel's going to start.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something before you start. I so am amazed by everybody's depth and reach, and I wonder how we can contain all of these feelings. And then I think, oh yeah, we contain them by writing and giving them and sharing them to each other. So thank you all writers, and thank you all audience, and Jewel, take it away.
Yeah, fabulous. as I suspected, I was just going to be happy to see everybody's faces and hear everybody's words. The only thing missing would be if we were celebrating with beverages and hors d'oeuvres next time.
Roger.
So I actually I wanted to start with Terry, since she and I have sort of turned more towards drama. I mean, I still write poetry, but I'm more towards drama now. And kind of ask Terry, what was it like as you were developing your ear for drama, your talent for drama, at a time when the movement was really focused much more on the written word, on poetry and fiction? How was that for you? How did you discover you wanted to be a drama, do drama?
Well, I guess in a certain way, I'm different from you, Jewel, in that I never was anything but in theater. In my opinion, we all start out in theater because as children, we spend a lot of our playtime becoming different people and animals, whatever, but most of you stopped and I never did. So
Lucky us.
I was aware that I was being left out of a major publishing movement that was happening for women and lesbians. I just was doing plays always. And I would say, though, that it is becoming a feminist that led me to be a playwright, because first I was an actor, but I never got cast. So that didn't seem to be working out so well. Then I was a director, so I could do the casting myself. And then once I was a feminist, which really happened in the late 60s, there was nothing I wanted to direct. So I started writing. So that's my arc. Blissfully unaware of the ferment of lesbian poets and novelists and then I just writing about myself always, but then when I came out as a lesbian, I was in a collective that I started, and most of the women were straight, and there was a taboo against talking about being a lesbian, in fact, in this feminist collective. So I left and wrote Dos Lesbos.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. It is true. I think a lot of us weren't really paying as much attention to the drama going on stages in the lesbian community. I mean, back east, we had Wow Cafe and Peggy and Lois, and they were always kind of my heroes. But as I was looking at us today, Elana, I just noticed there's Cheryl, Dorothy, Irena, and me were all on the Conditions Collective.
Yeah.
That was like a real connectivity too. So does anyone want to talk about that? Being on a collective, the Conditions Collective in particular? You don't have to reveal anything embarrassing, just.
Why not? I'm too old to care anymore. God, we had great potlucks. Nothing like sitting on the floor, eating and reading manuscripts and throwing them around. And oh God, a dream that I'm back in that room, in those different rooms, different living rooms in Brooklyn, and staying up late and talking about poetry and talking about lesbian writing with such passion and such enjoyment. God. Today I keep getting weepy and thinking about Conditions and everything that we did makes me even more so. Great memories, great work. So goddamn glad we did it.
I just have to say, as a reader of Conditions, it's an incredible, incredible thing, what you did. So powerful.
Thank you, Terry.
Irene,
Okay.
Irene, you have to unmute, yeah.
For me, there was one step before Conditions, actually, and that was Out and Out Books. And that was with Joan Larkin, Jan Clausen, myself and Ellie Balkin.
Yeah.
And Jan and I had been in a poetry group with Joan Larkin, which was called at the time 7 Women Poets. And we were all dykes. Don't ask me. I don't remember the conversation why we were 7 women poets, but we were 7 dykes. And out of that came the idea of self-publishing, of creating a fake imprint, which was Out and Out Books, but each of us paid for each of our own book. And that's also when Ellie published her first version of lesbian poetry. That was the first one. And it was from that sort of combination that Jan and Ellie and Rima and I decided that, mainly because Jan and I had so few outlets for anything, that we needed a magazine. And that was sort of the start of Conditions. But that was an important step, that first Out and Out Books before Conditions. And it was just a really important thing in terms of, for myself personally, I published very, very little. I had published a few poems, and they were all Holocaust poems. It was the only poems that anybody would publish of mine. And I knew I couldn't get anything else published. So part of me was just wanting to have a place to publish my new life, which was when I came out. And I had suddenly this life, I had feminism, I had all of these other things that I didn't know where to put it. And I think Jan probably felt the same way, and certainly Ellie felt the same way. And that was sort of the beginning of Conditions.
Mm-hmm. I should mention that Sinister Wisdom is doing a commemorative issue honoring Conditions coming up sometime soon. So, yeah. What was the question that we wanted to talk about, Elana?
Well, the first question was, how did we start publishing? Those of us who were publishing, how did we find our way into print? And how was that promoted? And who encouraged us to do that?
Mm. Yeah.
So those are 3 questions in one, but Kitty wanted to respond.
Kitty, you have to unmute.
Yes. Well, I wanted to talk about that issue. I came from Unbound Feet, and we were the first Chinese American women's performance troupe in the Bay Area. There were 6 of us, 3 were lesbians, 3 were heterosexual women. And we got together, I think in 1979, and we were, we toured. And that was, I think, for me, that was a place where I could write with other women, with a group of other women. And it wasn't just any poets, it was women who were Asian American and who were lesbians. So I went from Unbound Feet to, I think, the Asian American Theater Company, Lilith Women's Theater, and then Spinsters Inc. published my first book in 1983, I believe. But I know, Irina, you were talking about lesbian poetry, Ellie Balkin. That was one of the first places, the first anthologies I was in was lesbian poetry and lesbian fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I came from, basically, is from that time period. And then I guess I didn't see myself as a writer. You know, I had to have a day job, and then, you know, I could do whatever I wanted. So I felt like most of my writing life, I did that. You know, I wrote here, you know, oh, they want me to do a conference here, and, you know, so I did that little by little, and then just you know, continued my day job. But what am I going on about? I came
first publication.
Yeah, first publication, right? Well, I came up with that. Well, anyway, that's my experience. When I came out into the lesbian feminist community, the community of writers, I always felt like I was a token. I felt like what I was eroticized, I was exoticized, and so it was quite discouraging. And so I kind of carried that as part of my, I write on the side, and so, but here I am. And Cheryl, I talked to Cheryl one day and I told her I was going to retire from writing. And Cheryl told me, you cannot retire from writing. So here I am, Cheryl, 68, 9 years. I'm still writing and I'm working on a screenplay, everyone. So watch for that in a couple years.
That's great.
Well, I think that's good, Kitty. And I'm glad you followed my advice. I wish many other people would.
Yes.
But-
Amen, sister.
Somebody in
Yes.
the chat wanted to ask about this bridge called My Back, and its role in the community of lesbians of color writing. Cheryl.
Oh, I think its role is immense. And, it is still widely read among young women, dykes, students, lesbians on the street, and so, and it's still, it's still publishing thanks to Sharima Raga. She keeps it going. And it was so life-changing for me. Because, when we talk about how to start. Those your dogs, Kitty? I knew it. I knew they were hers. I mean, I have a dog too, so don't think I'm down on them. I'm not.
Well, the food's done, but this is the mailman now.
Oh, okay. Dogs. But this bridge was absolutely key to my development, as was Conditions 5. We talked about Conditions earlier. And I first published in Conditions a review of Intozaki Shange's Nappy Edges. So anyway, and I self-published my first book, Narratives, Poems in the Tradition of Black Women, in 1982. And Kitchen Table Press took it up, distributed it, and published its second issue. So I think once one's work is in print, publishing becomes easier. I'm not saying that's all you have to do, You have to have a body of work. This student asked me one time, she was really young. She said, "How do you get published?" And I said, "Well, you have to have writing." And she looked at me like I had said something so obvious. She said, "Yeah," like that. And I said, "Well, nobody is going to look at you unless you have a body of work, really." So anyway, I always think about that. I always get pissed about that. Yeah. But anyway, that's all I'll say for now.
Irina?
I just want to add to that I think, what Cheryl was saying, I think the issue of review, not only was it important to publish the books, but to review the books, I mean, was really critical, and Conditions, was very big on that. I know my book, my second book, Keeper of Accounts, Cheryl reviewed it in Conditions. Joan Nessel reviewed it in Off Our Backs. And that was huge for me. I mean, the New York Times wasn't reviewing me. This was my world. And I think that the people that just did reviews, who were not necessarily creative writers, were really critical in terms of just helping us distribute the books, because once, you have to publish, you have to write, you have to do the book, but then you have to get it out to people. And distribution was always one of the hardest issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to jump in there because I was thinking about, we were all talking, all those early magazines and journals and newspapers. They were incredible. They were incredible at getting us all into each other's lives. And it was a time when, like somebody would write something in Sinister Wisdom, and somebody else, and then it would be 3 months until the next Sinister Wisdom came out. But people would wait to hear the response. And then somebody would respond to that. So the responses could take as much as 9 months or a year from call and response in all of our journals. And we were patient and listening to each other in a very deep kind of way, and creating community in that way. And now everything kind of happens in the space of 35 seconds. And if it doesn't happen that fast, forget about it. We're on to the next thing already. So I would, in this context, I know we're all old and things take longer, but I still think that I want to make a plea to everybody listening to us. So the 155 participants still hanging out here. Take a little more time. Savor the writers, savor each other, savor connections, and savor call and response. Something that I learned that when I was a kid going to shul. I'm an atheist now, but I remember that training. And I also see it in every other culture, certainly in this bridge called My Back, which was very foundational for me. It was my great good fortune to live in the same apartment building with Gloria Anzaldúa for a number of years, and to work and write with her. We have community because of call and response, but we need the time for that. We need to allow the time to hear the response and take it in before we start speaking again.
Rather than twitting.
Yeah.
I joined Conditions in 1980, 81 in Brooklyn. And I still remember going to that meeting with Jewelle and, oh my God, Ellie Bulkin and all that food. I was a closeted writer. I came to writing and publishing as a revolutionary. And we formed a revolutionary collective in Tallahassee, Florida in 1975. God damn it. And we founded a press, Morning Star Media. We published a journal, Amazing Grace, which actually only ever had one issue, because then we were off to doing other things and forming a waitresses collective. I mean, I'm 72 years old. I can look back at that time. I don't think I slept. I don't think any of us slept. We were spending our lives in the pursuit of the remade world. And then when everybody just kept teasing me and made me publish the worst poem ever written in that issue of Amazing Grace, and it was the worst poem ever written. I can look at it and go, you can't see it. I won't let you see it. But it is exactly what you were saying, Irina. There was a community. They were waiting. I could get response. I could begin to creep into the life of being a writer. It was welcoming, even when we were terrible to each other, and we were terrible to each other. But we wanted each other. We wanted the words. God, we needed the words. I'm so weepy today. I can't explain. It must be an estrogen breakthrough. They say that happens to fat girls as we get old. But my memories are very, very comforting. and very reassuring. But yeah, I'm with you. Take a little time, read each other.
Irina, you wanted to?
I just wanted to add that I still remember when we first got Dorothy's first short stories. I am working on my charm. I mean, it was this extraordinary moment that we all knew immediately. So it was a ride. Let me tell you. With all the pain, there was a lot of pain, but it was really, it's nothing. I certainly wouldn't give up on it.
Oh, baby.
Somebody in the chat wanted to have a shout out to women's bookstores, independent bookstores, and I think we could all do that. Very little of this would have been as successful as it was without the number of bookstores across the country, so that when we self-published books or created our journals, we had somewhere to send them where they could be sold. And last winter, Karen London, who used to run Woman Books in New York, she came to my play. And when she walked into the theater, I was in such shock because I know I have not seen her in probably 35 years. And it was like a relative had walked into to meet me. I was so moved. And there still are some stores. We shouldn't forget that there still are some women's bookstores around the country, hanging on.
Yeah.
Terry, yeah.
Well, my path was a bit different because I was just producing plays. We were just putting them on ourselves. Almost everything I've done has been self-produced. And in the beginning, it really took very little. But first, before I go on, I want to just emphasize what Cheryl said about writing. I mean, thank goodness, Kitty, you listened to Cheryl, because for me, one of the great frustrations of teaching playwriting is discovering incredibly talented women with a vision who don't get it out into the world. They just stop. As women, that's a barrier we all have to overcome. So please, if you have a passion, keep at it and do it and have the guts to put it out. But anyhow, I kind of never had that problem of the guts. I just did it, But in terms of getting published, the first anthology of plays by lesbians, and I can see from the dates you're saying that was later than what you were doing. I think playwriting was behind in terms of publishing, because Places, Please, which was edited by Kate McDermott, came out in 1985. So that's quite a bit later than the other stuff. And it was, in fact, inspired. Kate saw a production of Dos Lesbos in Santa Cruz. It was the first lesbian play from a lesbian point of view she'd ever seen. And she said, I know there are other plays around like this. And she tried to find them in bookstores and libraries and couldn't. And then she said, well, I'm going to create the anthology. And it was necessary for Aunt Loot Press.
Oh,
So if Aunt Loot Press had not been there, Places, Please probably never would have been there. And that was a big game changer for me, because people all over the world started doing my plays.
Mm.
That's great.
Well, I think we had such a what do you call it, a blossoming of presses at that time. It was amazing, and I feel like I should give them credit or hold them responsible for me having a career today. If Firebrand Books had not been, if Nancy hadn't started Firebrand and done the Gilda stories, I'm not sure what else of my writing would have ever seen the light of day. And I feel like each of us benefited from women's presses in a very big way, which really makes me annoyed when you hear people say, well, feminism was really all about upper class white women. And I'm, women of color were not there. And I'm thinking, all of the working class and women of color writers I know exist today because of feminism, because of our participation as lesbian feminists. So that's my little pet peeve.
Thank you, Jewel. And I was 21 or 2 when I saw a notice for Daughters Inc. was looking for books in the Valley Women's Center in Northampton, Massachusetts. And I sent them this manuscript that I had written when I was completely stoned on amphetamine the last year I was in college. To be honest.
Now we're getting to the real deal.
Yeah.
And they more or less accepted it, and it was and I had the bizarre honor of being the first lesbian to ever be advertised as a lesbian in the New York Times, although they have never ever reviewed my work. But Daughters Inc. took out a full page ad and
Wow.
in the New York Times to advertise
Wow.
women and all the rest of their books. But even though Ruby Fruit Jungle was on that list, it wasn't described as a lesbian book. Only Riverfinger was described as a lesbian book on that list. So that was an interesting moment. But yeah, if it wasn't for Daughters Inc., I never would have had a publishing career. I never would have published that novel because I shopped it around to, I was very young. I didn't know what I was doing. I shopped it around to a couple of publishers in New York, big time publishers, and they all said, nah, this isn't really a novel. But June Arnold said, yes, it is. And of course, she fixed it up quite a bit. But yeah, that's how I started writing. And it was.
You don't know how many women I seduced by reading out loud sections of Riverfinger Women. Oh, that was so good.
Glad to be of service, ma'am.
Yeah, I know. What else can you say to that? Dorothy Allison.
Well, you did the same thing, all of you. I know you did. You find good lesbian writing, and you're going to run out and share.
Right.
That should be another program we do one day, the seduction poems.
Oh, that's an anthology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did anybody out in the world there have other questions? I don't know, Bev, if you have the question box.
Yeah, mostly the ones that have come through, you have answered. The only one that I noticed was that there was a young woman who wanted, and Cheryl kind of touched on this, but what advice do you give to young lesbian writers who are just coming up? I mean, I'm reading in the chat that many dykes with us today are very inspired by what y'all are talking about, but there's that specific thing, like, what do we say to the next generation? Because, and is the lesbian community, when you all started writing, what you were just talking about with the early journals and Firebrand and Aunt Loot, how are those days different than the days now for lesbians who are trying to get their words into print and so on? And what advice might you have for them?
Well, I would say they need to keep writing. And well, they need to want to publish. You just can't, you can't just write and hope somebody will pick you up. You've got to look for resources. You've got to develop networks. And you've got to write. As I say, you got to have a body of work. So, like Elana was doing, she was shopping her novel around, That's what you got to do. It's hard work. I guess it is. Because
Well, I think-
we don't have well, I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna stop there and let others talk.
I wanted to jump in because I think, Cheryl, what you may have been about to say is we don't have the same kind of publishing possibilities today that we had, 30 years ago. People are doing a lot of publishing online, and they're doing a lot of podcasts. And I think for contemporary writers, the biggest thing I think you need to do is find a community of writers that can be as encouraging and supportive as we were able to find doing during that lesbian feminist movement.
You're so right about that, Jewel.
Yeah.
No, you are. You got to
And
find.
you may have to create your own. There may be other people around you, who are writing, people that you can be in communication with about your writing, and to try to do something like that regularly with writing groups, but also to be aware that one of the reasons we are still in print is because we were in print. It was not in the ether. There are actual books that people would go to the libraries and read, that instructors and professors could pick up. I mean, this Bridge Called My Back has been in print for what? How many years? How many decades? The Guild of Stories has been in print for 30 years. And it's because there's an actual book. And to think about how you would self-publish your own work.
That's important.
So that you have a piece of paper that you can show around and share. And that's part of the way that you create a legacy. I'm not against electronic publishing and going online and all of that, but I think it's important to think about how your work gets preserved, so that 30 years from now, you will be one of us on this Zoom. Hopefully we'll be in person then, not on Zoom. Please let us be in person.
What did you say? Please
let us be in person, not on
in person. Oh.
I would just like to add to that, I've lately been thinking about where to put all my papers and half-finished stories and all that stuff. And the archivists say that paper is actually the thing that lasts.
Yeah.
That all of these electronic media, their programs get updated and updated and updated. And on my computer, I have lots of old poetry files I can't read and access anymore.
Right.
On my own computer, let alone all these other platforms that are going on that will be replaced. And what's on them now, unless there is a paper version of them, will disappear. So, we're losing archival kinds of material at the rate of, I don't know, there was an article I read like 20 years ago, we were already losing archival material at the rate of like 100 documents every minute. So if you have something and you want it to last, put it on paper, put it on good quality paper if you possibly can, but put it on any kind of paper, because even newsprint will last 100, 200 years. And I can assure you that the Microsoft Word program that you are using to write this afternoon will not. It will not last more than another 5 years.
Right.
So,
I mean, the discs that I wrote the Guild of Stories on 30 years ago are totally unavailable to me. I cannot open them in anything. And so when City Lights Book wanted to republish it, they had to take a photograph of every page, because the Guild of Stories does not exist anywhere on a computer on a disc. Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm the only one, but I actually sort of go through my emails and I print a lot of my exchanges. because letters have gone out of style. I don't get any mail anymore in my mailbox. Hard, envelopes. Remember those? Envelopes?
I'll write you, Irena.
Me too.
But I have
I
significant.
love letters.
I love letters too. And I have what I would consider important exchanges with people that I care about or that I respect. And they're long letters. They're really letters. I mean, it's not like email that you read it in 2 seconds and you have to respond. And I
Can't read your email in 2 seconds.
No, I know. I just, but I think it's an important record of our interactions, of what, how projects develop and evolve. And we used to have a lot of these files, but we don't have that anymore because everything is done electronically. And I think it's important to think about that just with your own papers and even for ourselves to be able to look back on. Because I can't access certain documents. I mean, it's like having spools of these tapes and DVDs that have gone out the window. I mean, you can't activate them.
Yeah.
I've got 45 years of paper. And we made a child, God save us, and I was trying to pay for his college, so I sold my papers to Duke University, and they showed up. And they were packing shit up and going through, and they were not interested in any of the media because in fact it was that issue, because I had floppy disks, this ancient piece of shit we can't do nothing with. All they wanted was paper. They did take some files, but then I got this, all right, now this, don't nobody tell anybody, but I mean, I sold them the papers, right? But I copied a fuck lot of it and sent it to the Lesbian Her Story archives because I could, and because I want my stuff to live. Let's be clear. I want to be everywhere. I'll be dead soon. I want to be everywhere. I want everything I ever wrote to still be available. I am pretty damn sure that something could happen in North Carolina and Duke could go weird, but I'm damn sure that the Lesbian Her Story archives is going to keep everything. And if anybody started fucking with it, I'd head to Brooklyn and stand on the street and yell at people. I'm sure you all would as well, right?
Yeah, right.
We'd be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, so we have to be realistic about the fact that we are still revolutionaries. We are still dangerous. We are still committed, impassioned. And at the bottom line, we're storytellers. Our stories cannot be allowed to disappear. Copy everything to the archives. They'll get overwhelmed and it'll be good for them.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing about this, and it's something that I remember. Oh God, I can see her face. Adrian's lover,
Michelle.
Yes, the Michelle Cliff wrote in an issue of Sinister Witticism that she and Adrian edited, but mostly it was Michelle doing the work. Just for the record's sake. Michelle wrote that we can talk about this a lot, but we also have to fund it. It's really important to make sure that we support those kinds of institutions with actual real dollars, because otherwise they're going to go out of business. The Lesbian Her Story Archives is actually full. They're having trouble about, with their floors being so heavy now that they are in danger of collapsing. They need another building. They need a temperature controlled storage space. So, how are we going to fund that? All of that's what, I hope that all of you will consider and remember to fund these kinds of lesbian spaces, and especially since we're old, remember them.
Write this down right now. Write it down.
Remember them in our wills, because it's nice to leave something to our nieces and nephews and children if we have them, but it's also really important to support the lesbian institutions that we hope will continue to support our ghosts when we go on.
Yeah.
To wherever.
Wherever, right.
We're coming to upstate New York, Cheryl, to your farm.
Jewel, we don't have a farm.
There is a question in the chat about where are the different archives and how do we support them prior to sending our papers to them. And I just want to say that on the OLOC website, if you go to the resources page, there is a list of various archives around the country. There's also a list there of the current women's bookstores that are still open. So if you go to any of their websites, any of their places, I'm sure you'll find an address where you can happily send dollars that they will happily accept. So, so just check out the OLOC website. And while I have the floor real quickly, I want to, this is not to end it, but just so that I don't forget, because I tend to forget things too. First of all, I want to thank you all very, very much. This has been very lively, very energetic. The chat is just going crazy with all praise for all of you all. So thank you very much for your time and your willingness, and especially to Elana and Jewel, who really did most of the work of putting this all together. I want to thank them especially for all their work. And also, while we're asking for money, this is a free event, and the writers and presenters have all volunteered their time. And so, but there are some expenses for OLOC. So I've noticed that there are many, many new people to OLOC who have joined for this particular event. So A, we would like to encourage your membership. And two, we would also like to encourage you to please either join OLOC or send us a donation or whatever, because that's the way the Zoom operates. OLOC by and large is a volunteer organization, but we do have expenses. And so if you've enjoyed this event and the many other events that we have coming along in the coming year, we invite you please to support this work. So that's my plug. And then I will turn it back to, I didn't want to stop the conversation, but I did want to get that in there.
Thank you. I think that's wonderful to have that resource on the OLOC website, because there are a number of different archives around the country that are specifically focused on either lesbians or LGBT plus papers and things like that. So, and as we get older, we should think these are valuable. You do not have to be, you know, the most famous lesbian in the world. You just have to be someone who has papers that talk about what it was like to be a lesbian in the world. And those are valuable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Terry, you have to unmute.
Unmute, Terry.
I will. I just wanted to mention, in terms of archives, the Bay Area Lesbian Archives, which was founded by Len Keller, an incredible community activist who passed recently. And there's always the possibility of doing benefits. That's what I did for the Bay Area Lesbian Archive. I did a performance of Hick a Love Story with all the money going to them. So that's another thing that we as writers can do, and performers, is support, not just by donations, but by doing performances or whatever. It's really important.
Great. Yeah.
There is someone named Liz Diamond who says she wants to say something. So Liz, if you could just unmute yourself very quickly and just tell us what you were going to tell us.
Thank you. This is Liz. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
All I wanted to do was say out loud, I think it's really important how extraordinary this moment right now is for women, lesbians of a certain age to be together and to have had this powerful experience of your reading, all of you, out loud. It was amazing. One after the next. I couldn't quite catch my breath before the next one started. And I know, because I'm reading the chat, that everybody feels like this. So if it's nothing else, and I know a lot more will come of it, I just wanted to say in behalf of everybody, thank you so much for getting together and doing this for us.
If y'all are you all finished? Do you want to say more, or because otherwise I would just say Happy Lesbian Visibility Day and everybody unmute yourself and clap wildly.